It was challenging at first because it was like I built the first Hempcrete house in Alberta, so it's really hard doing the first because there's just no reference. Pulling permits, that kind of stuff was very challenging. But they do have an alternative building permit that you can apply for in a lot of jurisdictions. So it's just an alternative building permit, quite simple to pull. And as long as you can validate the material that you're using and it can be scrutinized by code inspection, it's very much.
Hey guys, it's Mandi with Global Hemp Association. I wanted to say thank you so much for joining. I'm excited about the opportunity to build a relationship and connect this supply chain. I mean, after all, that's why we started the association. Our association was built on the foundation of connecting supply chain, building relationships, and helping you grow your business. Anyone from farmers, manufacturers, and distributors, people that are passionate about the supply chain, and those creating products selling into biofuels, plastics, textiles, construction, and building materials.
So I'm in from Denver this morning. I'm getting ready to go set up for the NoCo show. So I'm really excited to make connections. And Dion, I've had tons of people reach out already about this interview. Excited to hear what you have going on. And so thank you very much for everybody that's joining. Let us know if you have any questions. Chime in at any time. We'll give you a shout out. But Dion, before we go any further, you want to give a little intro about who you are, how you got into this industry, some of the background and all the goods?
Yeah, you bet, Mandi. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I've been in hemp building for just about a decade now. I got into it as a personal mission to build a better house. So just started researching and developing, looking into what other people were doing around the world and, making the best choices for myself. So again, it was a personal thing, developed into an interest, which turned into a passion and ultimately into a life mission.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about this passion, right? I'm not going to lie, and I know I'm not the only one that's like this, but I was extremely disconnected from the effects of what's in our home, right? And then we have a member that very personally went through some experiences and lost a family member due to mold in their home. Right? Or lost a child due to mold in their home. And there, at that moment, it was a huge click for me about what we're facing and how unaware our population is and people are, or builders, consumers are about what's happening. So can you kind of talk about, what are those things we should be paying attention to and what message should we as an association really be talking about to help bridge that gap with consumers?
Well, I think you nailed it on the head there with the mold issues. That's a big thing. Sick building syndrome, the building envelopes as they are today, typically they're sealed off, they're trapping moisture, they're trapping air, and this creates the perfect conditions for mold growth, right? So black mold's a big issue. I'm from Alberta, Canada, so we have some pretty wild shifts with the weather up here from really hot and moist to really cold and dry. So there's a lot of temperature shifts. I had mold in a house that I lived in. I had, big issues with mold. I had to take care of that. Between that and roofing issues, foundation issues, I thought there's got to be a better way to do things, right? So I spent a year just looking at what other people were doing around the world, from earth shifts, rammed earth construction, clay, straw bale. And the Europeans were doing this amazing thing with hemp, and I kept circling back to all the benefits of hemp, which include, mold resistance, moisture regulation, fire resistance, so many things get solved. So I said, somebody should be doing that here, and I'm a somebody. So that started it.
Okay, so I want to give a couple of shout outs again because I ran into Shane this morning at NoCo and I just saw him pop on and say hello. And Peter, I forgot to mention, this is really cool, Dion, and I'll have to make a connection for you, but Peter is building tiny homes and has really started to incorporate hemp into the build of his tiny homes. And we're raffling an opportunity to win a tiny home at NoCo built with hemp. And so I'll be sure to connect you because it's a semi-custom build. You get to kind of pick, from flooring and wall structure and, we've got the frame set up, but yeah, it's pretty awesome. So I definitely want to connect you.
Amazing.
Okay, so when we talk about, some of the things that you said, like mold, right? Foundation and structural issues. Where does hemp really play a role to provide better product? Can you give some of
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm from a farm community. We use lime for a lot of applications in agriculture, from soil reclamation and deacidification, if you will,
Mhm.
to, preventing mice and rodents, to food preservation. So lime, and of course, it's a mold resistant. It actually has the cure built into the wall. So
Okay.
as far as now, I've seen mold on glass, I've seen mold on steel. So to say it's completely mold proof is false. I've seen mold on the surface of hempcrete, but I've never seen it inside the hempcrete. So again, those are in very extreme situations. But again, I've seen mold on glass and metal, right? So it can grow everywhere.
Okay, so you said that lime, right? Is it actually
Yeah.
hemp or lime? And that's something that we talk about that I think is missold in our industry is what is it that's preventing the lime and what is it that's providing a continual carbon sequestration?
It is both. So as far as carbon capture goes, there's embodied carbon, which is the plant matter that's in the wall. And then there's also carbon sequestration that happens post wall construction. So that is ongoing for a long time after the wall is built. The lime calcifies and hardens with CO2. So it absorbs CO2 from the atmosphere as it cures and continues in small amounts as that transitional shift between seasons happens. So it's continually sequestering a small amount of carbon in its wall life, but it's that embodied carbon that we're talking about with the hemp. So that is encased in the wall, is protected, preserved for many years.
100 years, right? And much longer than what we're seeing in today's building practices or traditional building, which is even more exciting.
Potentially even longer than 100 years. We've
Oh,
got
yeah.
that embodied carbon. The Great Wall of China was built with a material very similar to hempcrete. It was basically lime, rice starch, and biomass. So it was boiled rice water, which had the starch in it, but that's basically what they used to create the Great Wall of China. The Greek Parthenon, same thing, a lot of very similarities. A lot of similarities. There's still structures standing from the Roman period that were
Yeah.
built with hemp and lime. So we're talking about a very proven ancient technology.
Well, and remembering that hemp is not new, right? We are new to
Right.
hemp. Hemp
That's
is
it.
not a new product. We've done
Exactly.
ourselves a disservice by not having it available. Like, yeah, and I know I'm preaching to the choir. So many people that are listening are actively involved in the industry. But what's really exciting is we just had somebody else chime in that is new to the industry. He was notified of our live, and so I need to say hi to Jeff as well. But understanding, right? There is such this disconnect in why we are building with hemp and what capabilities there are, right? There's also this understanding when I talk about hempcrete or you hear people say hempcrete, people that are not in our industry are thinking cement or concrete or streets. Can you kind of talk about, what structural, support looks like compared to a hempcrete block or a spray insulation?
Right. Yeah. So as far as what we typically use in conventional construction, pink insulation, rock wool insulation, there's a few different options. Well, even spray foam. There's very little structure in that. So like pink insulation is floppy. There's no structure in it. It gets in the wall, and over time it starts to sag, which creates gaps and thermal breaks. And that adds to the overall comfort or discomfort in your home. Hempcrete's not going to sag over time. Chris Magwood did some studies years ago that suggests that hempcrete actually adds to the structure of your existing framework, gives it up to 4 times the structural integrity. So to say that hempcrete's not structural is not accurate. It
Okay.
is. It has structure. It has.
Yes.
It'll harden over time as it sequesters that carbon to a rock. Essentially, it'll
Yeah.
petrify. So to say it doesn't have structure would be inaccurate. As far as being a structural material, that's accurate. It's not used as a structural material, but neither is concrete without rebar. So there's a substrate in that concrete that makes it structural. Much like with hempcrete, if you have a substrate, you're going to have a structural material.
Right. Well, and that's what we're seeing, right? Is a lot of structural builds have the same structural additives like concrete, right? So can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing? I want to hear. I see it all over social media. Hear people all the time in the industry talk about what a great job you're doing. Can you kind of break us down and what does process look like to create your blocks?
Yeah, so I started off in cast in place. That's where I think a lot of us got our start in the industry. It's fun, it's community oriented, it's labor intensive, it's challenging for supply chain management, job site management, sound, staffing. It takes a big crew to run a cast in place project. Mm-hmm. And I live in Canada, so my my building season is rather limited. So we've got 8 months on the high end, 9 months to actually get a build done. We're restricted with finishing. We can't plaster in the wintertime. We have to get things done rather quickly in the spring, summer, so we can still get some plaster in the fall. And then that's just a very hard way to compete with, and not that I'm into competing with existing industry, but proving the validity of Hempcrete. We got to be able to go year round. Right.
Well, and when we're talking about buyers, they are looking at competitive analysis is from price to longevity, all the different pieces. So I think it's fair to say that we do have to be able to compete with existing products on a number of different, touch points.
That's right. Yeah. And timeline was a big thing. You're looking at a long time for construction, cast in place. Even with the dynamite crew, you're looking at, with one mixer unit, you're looking at a couple hundred cubic feet a day, which, takes a while to build a house. The cure time is the real kicker. You're looking at 4 to 6 weeks for a cure time. You're standing around basically waiting for things to dry up before you can get in there. And again, that depends on the location of project. If you're in a very humid environment, you're looking at 6 weeks plus. Dehumidifiers, it's time consuming, and builders want to get in, get done, get paid, and go home. They want to do a good job and go home, right? So, in dealing with some of these issues, I thought there's got to be a better way to do things. There's got to be some way that we can compete with timelines with conventional construction. There's got to be a way that we can make this user friendly and something the builders are attracted to, so they can get on with their day. The blocks just made sense. I've been in the industry. I've seen other blocks. I've worked with other blocks before. For me, other blocks, they seem to be trying to reinvent the wheel. They seem to be going through a lot of hurdles with research and development and validation, whether it's structural or whether they're, however they're using that. I figured, why not use what's already being done? Why don't we integrate a block into conventional construction? Everybody knows how to build a 60% or 2x4 frame. You're not having to retrain building inspectors, code writers, all these kinds of things.
Labor,
exactly.
Yeah, technical.
So
you go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
I was going to say that teaching the construction industry, it's like teaching old dog new tricks, right? And for them to implement a new material that requires new skill and new trade, we're talking about a long time. And so I very much concur and go back to, we've got to be able to advance this industry, initially fit into existing practices and compete, right? Gives you a competitive edge. Yeah.
That's right. So we can keep our framing, our carpenters can do what carpenters do and they're trained to do. We can keep our framing consistent with what's existing. Masons have been putting blocks in for centuries. So we can fall on these trades that are already existing to do the work and get it done, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So tell me about your blocks. How are they being built? How are you using them? What does the assembly look like? Yeah.
Well, I think like every good operation, one gets started in their garage. So we've started out in the garage. We are busting at the seams right now at capacity. So we're looking at other options, which is great. Essentially, what the blocks are is they're a cabin block that fit into existing framework. So existing 2x4 or 2x6 construction. They can be, to be quite honest, we can produce over 15 different blocks with our mold system, which can fit into, wrap around the stud. We could do what we call an inset block, which fits into the framework. We can do a shuttering block that fits on the outside of the framework. We're really versatile with the system that's created. So we've got what we call the Divita cabin block, and that's something that slips into and overlaps the stud. Those are joined with mortar, much like conventional stonework or masonry. And, there's a squish out. We're using hemp lime mortar. So we're essentially, at the end of the day, we're finishing with a full Hempcrete wall. It's all monolithic. There's no, there's no artificial or synthetic materials in there. It's all natural.
Okay. So there's a couple of questions, of course, I have as far as time that you're saving when you build with this. Where are we looking? What are the competitive advantages when we talk the economics to switching from conventional? Because when I talked to somebody the other day about moving, to a hemp insulation or to a hempcrete in a home, he was like, I don't like plastic any better than the other guy, but cost is where it goes down to. So where do you present? What does that look like on the economic piece?
Right. I think, like you say, you hit the nail on the head. Is time. Time is a big thing. When you're dealing with installations in a cast in place, it's a very labor intensive project. You've got a lot of runway with wheelbarrows and even with spray insulation. And I love spray. I love all the different technologies. There's a time and a place for everything. The big thing is labor reduction. What takes me a couple hundred, if I can do a couple hundred cubic feet a day with a good crew, I can do a couple hundred cubic feet over that installation with one guy. So we've minimized our crew, taking it from 6, 7, 8. 6 would be a skeleton crew, 8 would be comfortable, down to 2 or 3. So we've got 2 or 3 guys on site. We don't have a big mixing site. Our staging area is cleaner. We're not bringing in bales or totes or pallets of hemp. We're not bringing in, pallets of lime and having garbage and debris and dust. And it's a very, very messy job site.
And over again, I hear the risk for error, right? If you don't mix it right, too much water, not enough water, if it's clumpy before it's spent, right? If you get rain,
Yep. And you're going to get a variation between, what we call tamping. So that's when you're putting the hempcrete into the wall cavity. You're going to have quite a variation between different people on how that goes in. And you don't know until the forms come off, who's doing what, really. You can correct that. And of course, there is some consistencies and a well-managed site to minimize that. But when you're working on a table is a lot easier than working in the field. There's a lot better quality control checks and balances. We can weigh our blocks wet. We weigh our blocks dry. We find that balance. We can correct that on the table quite easily. And you have a consistent product from start to finish, right? Whereas, with cast in place, you're not quite sure.
Okay. So speaking to those not in our industry, right? Why are they switching outside of the sustainability and the better for us, right? Because I still think there's this big disconnect in why people are choosing a better product, because it doesn't affect them, right? And so, what is that? When we look at, you said reduction in the number of people, when you go from a spray-in hemp insulation or hempcrete to a block. What about building traditionally to a hemp block?
Yeah, well, I could go on for a long time on that one, Mandi. There's so many benefits to hempcrete that, when I first started the exploration process, it was wow, it can do that, and it can do that. It's just on and on and on. From moisture regulation. I mean, I've had a shower. I don't know if obviously we've all had steam and hot showers, and that's great. You get out of the shower though, and your mirror's full of steam. In a hempcrete house, it interacts with the environment. So again, it's very good at moisture regulation. There's no steam on your mirror when you get out of the bathtub. There's no moisture buildup in your home. The acoustical value is amazing. The fire resistance is next to none, quite honestly. And I don't know if you know this.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know if you know this, but I had a fire in my prototype house that burned for over 7 hours, up to 13 hours. It was unattended. It cost me $40 to fix the damage.
I was going to bring this up earlier. I was really floored at the average time that we have to get out of a burning home is seconds, right?
Yeah.
And no wonder our death rate has skyrocketed for, homes that are lit on fire or damaged because, the quality of material and the damage that's done, it just exponentially happens and is slowed down exponentially when you're using a hemp building material.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, there's a lot of claims out there. Hempcrete is fireproof. Hempcrete is this proof. Nothing in this world is fireproof. You can burn rock and you can burn steel. If you had enough heat and flame to it, you can burn hempcrete. What hempcrete is very fire resistant.
Yes.
Now, it won't ignite. It won't flash or flare. And it creates a lot of CO2 if it does start to smolder. So in that smoldering, it creates CO2. CO2 is a natural fire suppressant. So the longer my fire burnt, the slower it burned.
Yeah.
In fact, there was tinder dry cedar surrounding where the fire broke out. And I couldn't explain how I didn't lose the house. I couldn't explain for the first while why I didn't lose the house until I learned that CO2 is a fire suppressant.
Yeah.
So not only did the CO2 snuff my fire, but because it was the biggest hot box you've ever seen, that made the rest of the building even stronger. The amount of CO2 that was in that building strengthened the rest of the building. So you don't, 12 minutes. That's what we have if a modular home burns down or starts fire. That's what you've got to get out of your house safely. Now, I could have, after I found the fire, I could have gone shopping and did my dishes and maybe a load of laundry and had dinner before I went and fought my fire.
Yeah.
So, and I fought it myself, it was, like I say, it burned for over 7 hours and I was able to fight that fire myself.
Yeah. These are the things that are not discussed, right? And these are the things our insurance company should be paying attention to. Like if
absolutely.
A hemp building material or a hemp, hempcrete insulation, it just seems more and more. Yes. And again, it comes back to the longevity of our product, the costs that we're paying. It just makes more and more sense as we talk about it. So we have a couple of questions that I want to get to really quick. Abdul's wondering, what does the hemp building permit process look like in Canada?
It was challenging at first because it was like I built the first hempcrete house in Alberta. So it's really hard doing the first because there's just no reference. Pulling permits, that kind of stuff was, very challenging.
Yeah.
But they do have an alternative building permit that you can apply for in a lot of jurisdictions. So it's just an alternative building permit, quite simple to pull. And as long as you can validate the material that you're using and it can be scrutinized by code inspection, it's very much, there are code inspected buildings in Alberta now. I did a code inspected yoga studio in Edmonton 2 summers ago. And there's a couple in BC, there's many in Eastern Canada, and I worked on another code inspected house. We did the cast in place installation on that last summer. So it is happening. And another thing too, a lot of people don't realize is if you can get an engineer to sign off on it, they trump a lot of these building code permit writers, right? So you cherry pick a good engineer that's familiar with the product and a good builder, and you're going to get it done.
And that was a great comment, right? And also you had said it earlier, really sticking in line with existing code. I have a lot of people that have brought products into market by meeting existing code for wallboard or hemp blocks or insulation or whatever it is, right? Instead of reinventing the wheel. The nice thing is eventually there will be codes because of the level of quality or I guess insulative, factors, all these different pieces, PSI. There was a question that kind of goes back to what I brought up earlier is this, understanding of the difference between hempcrete and like a cement, right? But wondering what the strength, Brian had a question wondering what is the strength of, what is the PSI strength of hempcrete?
See, and that's something that builders just aren't concerned about the PSI of hempcrete. It's not going to replace concrete. That's a reality of things. I mean, you can formulate concrete with hemp in it, but it doesn't perform like hempcrete. We're using hempcrete as an insulation as an infill for the walls, right? So, I don't recommend Hempcrete at grade unless engineering. Excuse me.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Okay, so then another question.
Unless
I lost you for a second. Go ahead. You must. Did you get a call or a text message?
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, it always cuts out.
So exactly.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Jinx, you're it. We're just going to
there might be a little bit of an overlap. Yeah, so we're not using it as a structural material. We're not putting it at grade or below grade unless very serious considerations for design and engineering are taken care of, right? So I have used it at grade. I have used it below grade. But again, there's some serious, you talk to a professional before you start making those kind of plays.
For sure. Okay, Brian asked another question. I just saw an article come out from Cornell about hemp rebar. Have you tried any hemp rebar, or what are your thoughts about it?
I love the idea of hemp rebar for so many reasons. I've used rebar in cast in place before. We got to go through a lot of effort to make sure it's coated properly, so it's not going to rust inside that wall. Line's very alkaline, and can break apart that steel. So I'm really, really optimistic about seeing that come online. I've used basalt, which is a mineral rebar. It's a rock rebar. So, and that's a great complement for Hempcrete structure, for Hempcrete building. But I'm really excited. I think all things should be hemp.
Well, and I love the idea. When I posted the article just recently about hemp rebar, there was another comment made about how exciting it is to get away from the rust, right? And then the longevity of rebar then increases exponentially. So that's pretty exciting.
Even with concrete. I was going to add to that. Even with concrete, that's the reason why concrete fails. Is a lot of time the rebar gets old and falls apart. So if the hemp industry can offer a solution to the concrete industry, I think we're making some progress.
Absolutely. I love it. Okay, so Tim's got a great question on here. Curious about what you think, Dion, about tilt-up hempcrete walls as manufacturing opportunities. Lots of commercial buildings utilize this type of construction. I hear this often, asking for prefab walls, especially in the modular, and like he said, commercial buildings.
Very much so. Very much so. And our innovation branch, 8 Fire Innovations, is looking into that. We see that as a huge opportunity, SIPs, if you will. Mm-hmm. I love the idea. I think that takes things to the next level. And it's an evolution of what we're doing here. So first we want to, the blocks are kind of, how do I say, low-hanging fruit. It's easy. People can relate to it because it fits into conventional construction. It's again, I think it's just bridging that gap between, what we've been doing in the last 15, 20 years to what we're going to be doing here in the next 15, 20 years.
Okay. So what does 15 and 20 years look like from now as far as growth, and what are needs in order to get there?
Oh, I think we are just learning how to walk right now. Like we just got out of a crawl. So a lot of
we're still wobbly. We still crawl half the time.
Oh yeah, we're like still in diapers. We're very much in the infancy stage of what we can do with. I think you hit the newer or the next step. You nailed that one. It's going to be in SIP panels. Blocks aren't going to go away. The block that we use is here to stay. It's a great retrofit. People can renovate their home when they start learning about all the benefits of Hempcrete. They don't have to sell their house and build a whole new one. We can get in there and, modify that so they can stay in their family home or whatever. But SIP panels, structurally engineered panels, I think that's a great step we're going to move towards. We're going to see more acceptance in the industry from code writers, building inspectors. When I started this, people looked at me sideways when I said Hempcrete. They didn't know what I was talking about.
You're going to get high?
Yeah, you're going to smoke your walls. But there's been a big shift in that. It's almost become a household name. People, I would say a good 50% of the people I mention it to now is, I've heard of that, or I've seen that, or So I think people are really starting to wake up to a healthier option and realizing that these sealed envelopes are causing so many health issues. and our living environment is so important to our health and wellness. So having a wall and a home that interacts with the environment, interacts with you, which Hempcrete does, we're going to see healthier people, and I think that generates into just a better world.
As much as the pandemic has been hard, it has definitely opened up awareness or turned the key for people to look into alternative building materials and alternative options, things that are going to last longer, less disposable, shrinking our supply chain. There's so many things that hemp hits that, with the mindset that are you going to get high or that's all it offers, limits. Big time. I read an article the other day that was pretty fascinating that said that 1 in 3 people have consumed CBD in the last year, and 1/2 of millennials consume cannabis or CBD.
Fantastic.
So I thought that was pretty fascinating, right? Like you said, we're starting to see it become a more household and awareness in places we haven't in the past, right?
And I think too, with the supply chain issues that we're experiencing around the world, having a local supply chain is huge. Being able to manufacture. I mean, I'm the envy of a lot of my peers in the industry because I live in Alberta, Canada, where we've been growing hemp since 1994. We literally have mountains and mountains of lime here. The Rocky Mountains are full of it. So we've got all the raw resources right here in Alberta to take care of our housing needs. And it just makes sense to do things local and support local economies and employ local people. And I think that creates security for our people.
Well, we're starting to see a lot of support from governments also for infrastructure build, right? That allows growth of supply chain and processing to get raw material. And that has to come before we can push our farmers into growing it, right? We've got to secure where are they going to take it. So we've talked about a lot of the perks and benefits. Can you talk about some of the real raw reality of where industry is and challenges we need to overcome to start to see scale and common adoption?
Yeah, I think that's, the biggest issue is with raw material supply. I think there's a lot of places in the world you just can't get hemp and process hemp. So processing is a bottleneck in the industry that we've all experienced, I think, at one time or another. And that will lead to product consistency. It's a natural material. So we've got different processors processing different ways for different commodities. And there's a variation in our supply chain that needs to be monitored and regulated to some degree. So we can have a consistent raw material. And that helps me in the production facility, creating a very consistent product, right? So those are areas that we need to obviously see some improvement on. Regulation, red tape, bureaucratic BS, if you will, that kind of prevents that type of building. There's no doubt in my mind that this is, like I say, I'm very passionate about it. This is a better way to build a house. So it almost seems like it's counterproductive, some of this red tape that we're experiencing. But nonetheless, I think at the end of the day, code inspectors, permit writers, building inspectors, their job is to make sure that they're going to have a healthy home. And it's right in alignment with my goals as well. So we're really on the same page. We want to make sure these materials are validated properly and put to those tests so we can have the data that backs and supports our claim, right?
Right. Data is a huge piece that we're starting to see take priority in our industry, right? This need for real data that's collected. And as much as I love trials or individual trials, those are proof of concept. Now we've got to gather, scalable data. And I think that it becomes, that input. Can you talk to me a little bit about, when you mention consistency, what are the specs of product? Because we hear a lot of times, well, can I use cannabis herd or leftover stocks, or can I, what type of processing are you finding that's providing the best quality of herd and cleanliness and size and so forth?
Right. So you nailed it. There's a lot of speculation and curiosity there. So the crop is grown. Cannabis is cannabis. Hemp is cannabis. It's going to come back together as one plant eventually. But, for the sake of the industry, hemp and cannabis have been separated for quite some time. Cannabis basically has the same type of cell structure. You've got a bast fiber on the stalk. You've got a core on the stalk. So in essence, yes, cannabis could be used for hemp construction or hempcrete construction. The big thing is a lot of cannabis growers are forced to destroy their waste products after they're done harvesting. So depending on what region of the world and what the local regulations are, there's not a lot of stuff to use as far as the cannabis industry goes. Now, I guess it depends on how the plant and what the plant is primarily grown for. CBD typically is pulled early from the crop. So if you're growing for CBD, typically they're pulling that crop pre-seed maturity to maximize the amount of CBD in the crop. So when doing that fiber isn't fully grown and fully mature. So you get a smaller fiber, which becomes grassier when it's processed. And what I'm looking for as a builder is a woody core. It's very much like it's a cellulose structure, right? So you're looking for the woody core of the plant. And in a plant that's grown for fiber specifically, you're going to have a stronger, thicker stalk, which is going to be decorticated. And if it's sized properly, sizing is another thing. Having that screened properly, so we get into that particulate size. And we prefer anything from 3/8 inch to 3/4 inch in our blocks and in our walls, maybe even some smaller fibers, but we don't want the bast in there. The bast can be an issue primarily in our mixing equipment more than anything else. It's okay if it ends up in the wall. It does add some structure to the hempcrete, but we want to minimize that bast in the product to less than 5%.
I want to address something you just said, right? Is this ability to potentially use the CBD crop or the cannabis crop, right? The stalks versus the fiber stalks. My understanding, and from everything we've heard, and what you just said to confirm it almost creates a dirty herd or dirty product with the bast in it, right? It's unclean. Right. Is that the CBD crops, or the way that they're grown, where the branch comes off that node, makes it hard for the herd to separate from the bast. They hold on to each other, in the decortication process. Are you seeing that, running into that? What's your, because I agree with you on the fiber and the production and what you're getting. What I hear from processors is separating that when they're decorticating that type of stock compared to a fiber stock that doesn't have all the branches. And
the smaller ones don't break as well or as easy, and then you're going to get very much a grassier herd from those smaller branches.
Gotcha.
For sure. But that's going to make its way into it. It's kind of an advantage to have a variety of size particulates in your hempcrete. It weaves, it weaves together a little bit like fiberglass, if you will. Again, we don't want to have too thick or too long of strains or too long of fibers in there. 3/4 inch would be an absolute max that I would want to see in my hempcrete, but it is nice to have that variety. For sure.
Interesting.
And you're right. The bast is it's a great material, and it's a higher value by the ton or by the pound. So when people are processing it, they want to get all that fiber out of there because it's a higher value crop, right?
Well, and then it creates a clean herd, like a consistent herd, if it's not holding on, and I think that, so I'm always curious about that. And I think that's where a lot of the R&D or our discovery is going to be over this next couple of years, is taking genetics now through different processing to know, what end product we're coming out with the most consistently.
Yeah. And processors are on the ball. I'm working with local processors to help dial it in for our specific needs. We got a processor here in Alberta that's running 4 different decorticators. They're set to launch here this month. So they're running 4 different decorticating units to accommodate the different industries, right? So
I like that.
We're giving them feedback. I work with a lot of different processors, just showing them what my needs are and what I expect and need on the job to make it the best I can.
Awesome. Okay, so what have been some of your favorite projects you've done? And then I want to know the most challenging projects. Like, what has been something you've been able to accomplish or overcome that really was a almost made you call the quits?
I think every project's my favorite one. I've had some really great projects. Yeah, and my crew is amazing. I work with an international crew they're really dialed in now. So I think my most challenging one was my first one. So that was my house. Just not understanding the material. Really, it was like I'm still crawling around, just trying to figure things out in the dark. I did have a great mentor and guide, so it helped the transition. But yeah, just kind of learning that whole learning curve was very challenging. So part of the reason why I offer consulting and education is to help minimize that learning curve for other people. I would say that would be my most challenging one. I've got a lot of favorites. We did a project for a competition, a tiny house competition, a couple years ago in Calgary. And we had 20 people on our team, and we had about 20 people that just naturally gravitated to come help us out. So we designed and built a tiny house in 4.5 months, and took it down to Calgary, competed in the competition. We won 3 out of 4 awards. Awesome. We have a little rivalry with our sister city down south, between Edmonton and Calgary. And yeah, just like our hockey team, we went down there and cleaned up. So it was,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Very challenging. I got to be honest, we only had 4.5 months, and we were crunched for time, a lot of volunteer help. So it felt like a little bit homes on homes and a little bit Iron Chef, like running around trying to finish things off at the last minute. But no, it was good. It was worth it and a lot of fun. I did a yoga. I also did a yoga studio last summer. That was amazing. Not last summer, sorry, summer before last. A lot of synergy with the ladies I was working with, and their mindset and the reason behind what they were doing. It was a lot of fun to work on that project as well. So
the yoga studio seems perfect for a Hempcrete building when we're talking about its, moisture, regulatory or regulation capabilities. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but yeah.
And that was a project that, so there was a lot of talk in the industry. Should we do Hempcrete with steel studs? Should we not do Hempcrete with steel studs? What are the pros, cons, risks, etc.? And I said, hold my beer, and I did it. In order to get validation through the code, to have it code inspected and approved, they needed steel studs. It was a commercial project, and that was just a local building requirements. Mm-hmm. The Hempcrete we did was in internal walls. It wasn't on the building envelope, so I didn't install Hempcrete on steel studs in the envelope to mitigate risks. But all the interior walls in a well-controlled environment with the Divita block, I felt confident we could do it and have a good result, which we did. So in that controlled environment with the precast blocks, the pre-cured blocks, that wall system was dry the weekend after we installed. There wasn't a lot of lingering moisture against the studs, and we had great success with it.
How cool. Well, congratulations. It's definitely been fun. Tell me about your experience in kind of leading this. What's been the most rewarding piece of being able to, I guess, take this torch, right, and really carry it and see success. There's a lot of people that have been talking about it or trying to do it, and being able to see success is a completely different piece of where the industry is, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of behind the scenes. Success comes with a lot of failure. I got to call it like it is. That's the difference between a master and a rookie. Is a master has failed more than a rookie has tried. So, I'm constantly poking the bear. I'm constantly trying to push the envelope of the material, finding what its break point is. Again, we like to see the shiny success stories, but there's a lot of behind the scenes, nitty gritty stuff that goes on. Right. So it's from supply chain management, having to source materials, trying to keep it local, training people to do a good job. And I mean, there's a lot of challenges, so I think, success comes with trial and error. It comes with failure. It comes with pushing the envelope. It comes with bleeding knuckles and
Okay.
Moving it forward from my work is very rewarding. It's nothing worth it is easy, and nothing that's easy is worth it. So seeing those, how do you say, those successes in the failures is inspiring and what keeps me going.
Oh yeah. What is it that, they say that everybody that from the outside sees success is this, right? But really what's happening is like,
oh yeah. Yeah. And I started out as that guy that built that tiny house out of weed, right? Like it was, I come from a small town, so there's people who, what the hell is Dion doing now?
Hi. No trick or treating.
It's a windy road, and people still talk about that, that tiny house guy, whereas I'm kind of moved on to big projects. My last couple projects were 1,600 and 1,800 square feet. But I still, again, you start going one direction and it takes you a completely other direction. So that's.
Absolutely. Okay. So we're coming up on a last little bit of time. If anybody has any questions, let us know, where you're at. We'd love to hear from you. I see there's quite a few of you on, and so I'd love to say hello. But I do have, and I guess I still see Isaiah, thanks for stopping in and saying hello as well. Okay. So upcoming innovations, right? What do you see as some of the exciting innovations in this industry, and who do you know that's really doing things right? If you want to give anybody a shout out.
Wow, there's a lot of great players in the industry. I'm not going to name them all. I love.
No, it's too hard.
My industry associates, some of the OGs in the industry, Sergey, blessings to Sergey in the Ukraine right now, Sergey Kovalenkov, Cameron McIntosh, Stephen Clark down in Mexico, Alex Sparrow in the UK. There's so many great guys doing great things in the industry. We've come together as kind of a brotherhood of support. I think the industry is going to go a long ways with these guys leading the charge.
Amen. I love it. Well, and shout out to everybody in Ukraine and Sergey. We're excited. Yeah. I understand he's going to be here at NOCO this week. And so I'm super excited to shake his hand, give him a high five and congratulations. Because
I want to backtrack also and say brotherhood and sisterhood. There's a lot of great women in the industry as well. So, Pam Borsch and I mean, it just, the list goes on and on. There is a really great collaboration going forward. And sorry to cut you off there, Mandi. I wanted to correct myself.
No, you made my heart sing just now, because you're exactly right. What I've been so excited about, especially in the construction and agriculture space that is so led and dominated historically by men, the women are pulling some stuff together and doing an incredible job and really leading the charge in collaboration. And so I also want to give a shout out, not only to them, but to the men that have leaned in and really supported the growth of both the women and the industry.
Absolutely. The Joy Beckermans of the world, the Andrea Hermans, I mean, they're just doing an amazing job. So it's great to see the collaborations and support.
It's pretty dang exciting. I'm excited about it. Okay, so shout out for anybody that's at NOCO. Please come see us at our booth. We've got an awesome setup we're going to be working on today. There's lots going on. And then we're also hosting an awards banquet where we've partnered to highlight some of the leaders within the industry. So going back, Dion, to your award, I have a question. When you said you won 3 out of the 4 awards, what are some of the things they were looking at, that Hemp capitalized on? Is it carbon footprint, sustainability? What are some of those things?
It was actually graded on a very long list of I guess, requirements or conditions or whatnot. Sustainability was a big one. Mm-hmm. Local production, local replaceability, or remanufacturing of the project. There was a lot of different things, but sustainability and local was a big thing. And that's a big thing that we focused on for the entire build, keeping it local. And the cost was a big thing. So having volunteer support, friends and family and volunteers, was a way that we could really keep that cost down. So there was, a lot of different aspects.
Cool.
We won for best tiny house finished on site, best tiny house built off site, and we won the Best Team Award. So I put together a dynamite team of amazing hemp professionals that just came through. So
awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So the reason I bring them up is because we also on our awards tried to focus on things like carbon footprint, economic impact, leadership in agriculture, things that are so much bigger that hemp hits than best material or product on its own. And so I'm excited to hear that those same things are being recognized in verticals that hemp is obviously impacting, like building and construction materials. So pretty awesome. Nathan has one real quick question and then we'll sum up. But Nathan is wondering, and we kind of went over this, so maybe it's better if you want to share contact information and people reach out to you, Dion. But Nathan is wondering what your specs are for inputs on your hemp block.
So again, we can produce multiple different blocks. So we create a 2x4, 2x6 construction. That can be the 2x4 construction can be as little as 6 inches deep. We can go to 10 inches deep. We can stack those blocks in front of each other to make them any depth that's really needed. An inset block, which is 3.5 inches on a 2x4 wall and 5.5 inches on a 2x6 wall. We can do those blocks 8 inches tall to a foot tall, depending on the job site and what's needed. So what we do is we look at case by case scenario. Every job site's a little bit different. Every client and project has a little different needs. So we assess those and try to consult with the client and finding the best solution for that specific job. As far as the specs go for the block itself, we maintain a binder and herd ratio that satisfies about an R2 is what we say. But we're also finding that the R value is not necessarily static with Hempcrete. So we base that evaluation on the low end, which is an R2 per inch. And then, of course, in most building, most areas, most building codes require that it has a fire rating of 3 hours or better. So we're looking to satisfy with the blocks basically a thermal resistance and our fire rating. So those are the two criteria that we're looking for. Structure is not an issue because we're using the existing framework of the house. So hopefully that answers this question.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so if someone wants to get in touch with you or your team, how do people find you? Where do they connect with you on social?
Yep. Eighth Fire Innovations is on social media, both Facebook and Instagram. My email is eighthfireinnovations@gmail.com. My website is eighthfireinnovations.com and divita.ca. That's DIVITA.ca. We're still pre-launch with the blocks, even though we're very busy in that capacity right now. We're still pre-launch. We were hoping for the end of March, but now it looks like mid-April. So I think we're going to shoot for a 420 launch.
Something special about
that. Yeah, and I've been focusing on the Divita. We're redoing the website for Eighth Fire. It's very old. It's outdated. Doesn't have a great portfolio on it. But I've been focused on the Divita and my IT collarbone. So that's not launched yet. We've got a landing page for that. You can reach out to me there, or again, eighthfireinnovations@gmail.com.
Awesome. Okay, and if anybody needs anything, I also have to show you our really cool shirts that we made for this conference. Moving Hemp Forward Together. We partnered with Friends of Hemp, and so swing by our booth, and I'll have to send you one, Dion. They're all made out of hemp. Nice, just fun, but really about bringing people together. So
amazing.
Cool. Okay, well, holler at me if you need anything, Dion. I'd love to invite you back if you want to dive into some questions. We've got an event. What day did I tell you? On the 30th? Let me look at my calendar while we're on really quick. Yep, on the 30th at 11 o'clock for a construction and building meeting specifically about building materials in this industry. So Dion, if you'd like to join us again, I'd love to have you on and invite people to come back and really dive into specs and all different subjects. And so we'll invite people from all ends of the supply chain. Other than that, you guys, I'm going to go off and set up our booth in NoCo and get pumped up to shake hands. I will definitely let everybody know to come back and follow your video. For those of you that are listening, hit subscribe on our YouTube or the little bell on LinkedIn to let you know when we go live again every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Other than that, Dion, anything else for closing?
I just want to say thanks for having me, Mandy. It's a pleasure to meet you face to face and have this time with you guys. So, yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Crystal and Joe and Juan, Isaiah, who joined in today and said hello. And we'll see you next time, Dion.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mandy.
Have a good day.